Last season, we secured greatness with Red Bull Honda for Season 6 of my F1 2018 career mode. And going into Season 7, there was an option to continue with Red Bull Honda and go alongside Max Verstappen once again and go toe-to-toe to see who could get the championship for a second time running perhaps. But instead, a new project has come about. The option to take a team that has never seen championship glory in their history of Formula 1 and try and make it happen for them. It's Season 7 and it's time to step into the cockpit of the Scuderia Alfa Romeo Sauber F1 team.
Have arrived from the factory without issue. They'll be fitted to the car in time for the next session.
Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to an episode of my F1 2018 career mode, episode number 127 today, the beginning of Season 7, round number 1 out of the Australian Grand Prix. Last season is last season, everything gets reset to 0, and we go again. And this time, yes, we're going again with Alfa Romeo Sauber. This is going to be a very interesting challenge. Driving alongside, obviously, the youngster, the young shot, Charles Leclerc, is going to be a very exciting season. Sauber come into this season with a lot of upgrades there. 2 aero, 2 chassis, and 1 engine side. So very curious to see how big of an impact those upgrades make to the car. They were obviously in an okay position. They were a solid midfield team last season. And I'm hoping that along with these upgrades and relative to the other guys upgrading around us, that maybe we can try and make a stride into Season 7. Of course, as a team, I'm sure that's what they're hoping as well. Remember, from Season 6 to Season 7, there was no rule regulation change. Just like we had back in Season 1 to 2, there was no rule reset. Everyone stayed the same in terms of nothing got reset in the engine, chassis, or aero department. So it really was a case of who's going to develop the best over winter rather than who's going to adapt the best and save their components over the winter. So this actually, in theory, should bring the grid closer together, because usually in Formula 1, you get the biggest gulfs when regulations change, actually. It's when the regulations stay quite stable that you get a kind of effect of the top guys unable to really make much ground and the middle and bottom guys able to catch up to them eventually just by the law of diminished returns. So we're going to have to see how that all plays out. But before we get to the car and seeing what every team is like in terms of the R&D and what we are on paper, we've also got some interesting developments here for Season 7. So obviously our new team boss is Frederick Vasseur, and he's got a new email for us in regards to driver changes for Season 7. So we had a couple in Season 6. So going to this season, he says this season some drivers have moved teams. One of the case though, I'm sure you'll still be able to rise to the challenge. That I will. So driver changes include Fernando Alonso has gone back to Renault. Obviously, he won 2 championships there, so it's a very different team, obviously. They had a bit of an up and down season last time. Obviously, Ricciardo used to be at Renault, but he's no longer, but he had so many reliability issues there. I think it was 7 or 8 DNFs at Renault. He went away from Red Bull in seasons 4 and 5 to get better reliability and got met with even worse reliability at Renault alongside his teammate Carlos Sainz. So Fernando Alonso returns to Renault and makes it a double Spaniard lineup for the Renault outfit there. So kind of ironic. A French outfit has 2 Spanish drivers. Then for Red Bull Honda, Pierre Gasly is promoted from Toro Rosso and he moves to Red Bull to replace effectively my seat that I vacated from Season 6. Not surprising that. Obviously Gasly literally was in the fight in the last race. Abu Dhabi, he was literally a spanner of the works for both me and Verstappen. No surprise that he's been promoted. He's been such a great driver for the last 2-3 seasons. We're in that Toro Rosso car, has really mixed up with the top guys. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes now in the top Red Bull team. Esteban Ocon, this is a surprise. Esteban Ocon moves to Toro Rosso Honda then to replace Gasly's seat alongside Van Dorn. Dan Ricciardo leaves Renault, and he obviously vacates the seat that Alonso is going into, and Ricciardo moves to McLaren. So effectively just a swap basically between Alonso and Ricciardo from McLaren to Renault there. And then Valtteri Bottas moves from Sauber. Obviously he was here. I now take his seat, and he's moved to Force India then. So 5 driver changes for season 7. I think we had 5 last season as well. So these are quite interesting. I think in a way these changes are more interesting than the ones we had last season. So it's a nice change of scenery for a lot of these guys then. So it's going to be a very interesting season to say the least. How the likes of Alonso is going to do in Renault, Gasly in Red Bull, and I'm sure Ricciardo will be hoping for a much better reliable season in McLaren. Whether it's a good one performance-wise remains to be seen. And finally, we've got a second email from Vasseur talking about the team itself. So he goes, "Hi Arv, this season the team is setting its sights on establishing itself as its own entity and distancing ourselves from the affiliation with the Scuderia Ferrari team. You arrived into Formula 1 as a Ferrari junior driver, but Ferrari cut ties with you after season 5. Of course, if you watch the career mode, you'll know all about that. I came into F1 season 1 and 2 as a Haas driver. That was part of the Ferrari junior program. I then went on loan to McLaren for season 3. I then finally made the step up to the top team at Ferrari for seasons 4 and 5. They then fired me at the end of season 5, and I went to Red Bull." And so Vasseur continues on, "Following your season 6 campaign with Red Bull Honda, we think your appointment at the team now for season 7 is a statement of intent. A statement that we are no longer a Ferrari junior team looking to develop talent, but instead looking to compete at the highest level of Formula 1 and championing the Alfa Romeo brand. As a result, the Alfa Romeo presence in the team will be notably stronger, with our Ferrari power units being branded as Alfa Romeo power units, and the team expects to be the #1 team using these Ferrari units." Of course, Sauber were actually already the #1 team using Ferrari power, because last season, season 6, I think Sauber finished dead in the middle in the championship, but both Haas and Ferrari were way down the bottom 3, so they already kind of established that. But obviously, Vasseur alluding to they want to further establish that. You can see in the pecking order, it looks like we're up into 3rd place actually. Sauber leapfrogged both Toro Rosso, McLaren, and Mercedes over the winter, so very good development there. And so he says, well, to finish it off, "We know you and Charles will do a great job this season. That I hope we will. That I hope we will." So having a look then at that performance chart then, and seeing how we moved up into P3, you can see that dark maroon red colour line moving up ahead of Toro Rosso, McLaren, and Mercedes there. So a really good job my new team has done over the winter. You can see Renault plateaued. They'd had no development over the winter. I suspect they might have hit the literal peak of R&D there. That's what happens when you don't get any rule regulation resets. Red Bull closed up a little bit, so my old team did develop a fair bit going into this season then, but we are probably the biggest winners over winter, because Ferrari actually went lower. They went back behind Haas, because they were ahead of Haas before going into winter, but now they're back down to the 2nd worst team. Williams really close up, so Williams could overtake Ferrari and make my old team from season 4 and 5, the guys that fired me, they could become the worst team on the grid. That would be something. That would really put to the mark that Alfa Romeo Sauber are no longer just a junior team, and that we are our own outfit. We're looking to try and challenge for the top spots here if Ferrari are all the way at the bottom there. And then you obviously got a midfield fight between the likes of Haas, Force India. Toro Rosso have dropped off a little bit there, but we saw last season, even though they dropped off in the same way with R&D, they were still fighting right up there. So never count out Toro Rosso Honda there, but it's going to be interesting for us to see. It looks like we've got work to do to stay ahead of Mercedes and McLaren, and then also try and catch up to Red Bull and Renault. But I'm very, very happy with my decision then. Obviously, I really did not know where everyone would be. I could have picked any team and it would have been just potluck, but I picked a team that's developed very well over the winter, and so we come hopefully into Australia with a pretty okay car. Of course, we won't know until we just get out there. So speaking of that, let's get out there and just see how we do. Well, here we go then, our first laps in anger in the Alfa Romeo Sauber car here for the first time, and I gotta say, feeling-wise, felt a little bit odd. I think it's going to take some time to get used to this car, really, compared to what I was used to at Red Bull. This car may be the 3rd best car on the grid, but I don't know how to explain it. You can almost tell and feel that this car used to be a bottom 2, bottom 3 car from season 1, because although it's improved so much to the point where we're going to be able to match, hopefully, Red Bull and Renault maybe, or at least get ahead of Mercedes and McLaren in the midfield, in the top midfield fights, you can kind of tell here and there, you know, there's a little bit of understeer in a few corners where you don't expect it to be a bit more of oversteer here and there, and also just locking up a little bit easier than maybe I wanted or was hoping for compared to what I had in Red Bull. You can kind of just tell that the car has come from a lower down kind of spectrum, and it's something that might not go away for the the entire season. We'll have to see how the upgrades go for us, but you know, definitely is going to take, I can already tell, maybe a few episodes for us to get fully used to the new handling in this Sauber. I know I say that maybe a lot for all the new cars we go to, but genuinely this has been the biggest difference from one team to another. This car does feel like a bit of a different animal. I definitely have to have maybe a different driving style to what I was used to at Red Bull. Red Bull, I was able to really chuck that car around. It was so aggressive, so planted on the ground in the last couple of episodes, and this very much is not. It's very floaty. Gonna have to kind of maybe take a bit more caution kind of action with it and drive a bit more smooth than I was in the Red Bull car perhaps. But in the end though, we do get through into Q3. Then thankfully Q1 and Q2 was but a formality there. You can see I'm actually matching Leclerc very close in Q2, so that was quite promising at least, to say that I was feeling quite weird and odd in the car. I was still able to pull the lap time out and match my teammate. That's what you want to do, you know. If you can't beat your rivals in other teams, you know, the best thing you can do is beat your teammate at least. So we were behind our teammate in Q2. Hopefully Q3, the top 10 shooter, I can try and get the better of him. We'll have to see. We're on our flying lap now in the last sector, then trying to get the best out of this car. Very awkward though into this second last corner there. A little lock up on the front left, and like I said, this car, well, I feel like was quite prone to lockups compared to the Red Bull car, so I was very worried about that the entire time. So I might be going a little bit easy into corners compared to what I was in the Red Bull car, you might see. But we go across the line at the moment, provisional P2. It's eventually P4 behind Fernando Alonso in the Renault, his new Renault surroundings, of course. I'm though ahead of Leclerc though on this first run, and at the moment I am green in the last sector, but only just about. And we're going to go to the red probably as we enter the last sector, so this might not be an improvement on this second flying lap, but it might not need to be, because it looks like we are maintaining our lead ahead of Charles, and so I think that's the best I can hope for, because it seems like that's where we are really. We're behind a Renault. I assume one of the Red Bull cars is right up there, and perhaps Carlos Sainz is also up there. We'll have to see when we go to the full results, but we go through the last corner then to the line. We are going to get a slower lap time unfortunately on that second run, so we will finish up in P4 on the second row of the grid alongside Fernando Alonso. It's going to be Carlos Sainz, one of our rivals from last season in the Renault. He is on pole position with Pierre Gasly, the man that took my seat, in second place. But Leclerc, we've beaten him. He's in P5 though, so well matched there, and looking forward to this. You know, it's the first race. You really can't have any goals and expectations from round one. You just go out there, do the best job we can. So from P4, let's do the best job we can, and so here we go. Let's go to the grid.
New drivers, new cars, and a new Formula One season. But it's the same Albert Park that we've come to know and love for more than 2 decades now that hosts the first round of a 21-race championship, taking us from here in Melbourne, Australia, across the globe before we eventually reach the season finale at Yas Marina Circuit in Abu Dhabi. So here we are at Albert Park Circuit. 3.3 miles of public roads, closed for the weekend of course, make for a bumpy surface with little undulation. There are 16 corners around the lake, with the best passing opportunities coming at turn 1 and turn 3. I'm joined today in the commentary box, as I will be throughout this season, by a great racing driver, former F1 competitor, man who was world champion once upon a time as well, and an all-round top chap. It's the one and only Anthony Davidson. And tell me, here we are, first Grand Prix of the season, the first time racing these cars. So what are the big questions that need to be answered here, in your view?
First of all, Crofty, and thanks for the glowing introduction. I just want to say it's a real privilege to be here, and I can't wait to see what this competitive field has in store for us this season. Now, to answer your question, obviously there's the question of performance in race trim, but really this is going to be all about reliability. It's the first Grand Prix of the season, don't forget. You're pushing all your new components to their limits. Formula One cars are full of very sophisticated but also very sensitive technology. So the most important thing today is to get to the end of the race, keep everything in good condition, and try to stay out of trouble while you're at it.
So let's have a look then at the starting grid ahead of the Season 7 opener here for the Australian Grand Prix for the F1 2018 Career Mode. Carlos Sainz continues on the good performances he showed last season for getting pole in his first race. Pierre Gasly, the new Red Bull man, in second. Fernando Alonso is then third place and back at Renault with myself in P4. Leclerc P5 with Verstappen in P6. Then comes Ricciardo and Ocon, with around the top 10 is all Mercedes, Hamilton and Nico Hülkenberg. Then Van Dorn, Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Brent Hartley in P14. Then the next row is all Haas, with the next row all Ferrari, and then the final row of the grid is all Williams here ahead of Season 7 of the F1 2018 Career Mode. Let's get into this. Okay, bit of an unknown here today because I don't know how this car's going to handle heavy fuel and really just how it's going to go because it really did feel very weird in qualifying, but nonetheless we get the lap time out of it, so at least that's something, so hopefully we can get the lap times out in the race. Strategy-wise, that will be simple. One stop from Ultra to the soft tyres. Obviously, Season 7, the R&D is getting to the peak. Everyone on the grid is going to have very good tyre wear on the chassis side of the upgrade part of the tree, so that shouldn't be an issue for us. So from P4, hopefully the aim is maybe a podium if we're lucky. We'll have to see. Those two Renaults and the Red Bull will be very strong, but here we go then to the start of a new season, Season 7 of F1 2018 Carremo. The fire lights are out and we're underway, and it is a good getaway from us actually. Could we maybe get into P3 into turn 1? No, Fernando Alonso is able to pounce round the outside actually and has a look on Pierre Gasly instead, and so we remain in P4. Leclerc has remained in P5 ahead of Verstappen then, so at least we haven't gone backwards, both of us then, and so it's still going to be Carlos Sainz in first place, Gasly P2, and so no change at least for the top 6 on the grid order there on lap 1, but now we just try and settle in and try and see if we can try and close up and keep up with Fernando Alonso. Obviously Renault do have on paper the advantage, so I'll be expecting Alonso to give Gasly a challenge in these next few laps and for us not really to be keeping up too much, and so we'll see as we move on to lap 3. We've got a team radio message coming up which will be important.
Okay, some information on Sainz. They have an issue with their car. They're going to be slow.
So the race leader has issues there. So it was Ricciardo's car that had all the issues last season for Renault. Will it now be the turn of Carlos Sainz on the other car on that Renault team that has the issues? So he might be slowing down, but he's still first place with quite a bit of a gap to Gasly on the minimap there in second place. We'll see about that. Meanwhile, for us, you can clearly see we are not doing too well at keeping up with Fernando Alonso, and we're actually being pressurised by our teammate. Meanwhile, now eventually, just literally a lap or two later, Gasly's going to go round the outside and try and take the race lead for Red Bull Honda there, the new man promoted from Toro Rosso, and there he is into first place, and there goes Alonso now down the inside. The two Renaults are neck and neck, and Alonso is going to go easily into P2. Sainz with a major issue here, so he's going to be slow, and so we will be getting up into P3 hopefully pretty soon. Here we go, right up his good bus. We're going to make the dive bomb down the inside. It's a lock up on the front left, and we are so close to tapping tyres, but no contact was actually made there, and so we swoop around the outside, and it's a very nice move, albeit on a slow car with a bit of a limp, but we're up into P3 then. So like I said, we're hopefully trying to aim for a podium from P4 on the grid, and so we are up into P3. It remains to be seen though, you never know. Leclerc, once he gets past Sainz, he had some decent pace there. He was pressurising me, I can't lie. I was not feeling comfortable ahead of Charles there in that first few laps of the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, back behind, we've got a potential fight between the Mercedes car of Nico Hülkenberg and Dan Ricciardo in his new surroundings at McLaren. And of course, he's hoping for much better reliability in the McLaren, but on the performance chart, McLaren obviously is not as fast as Renault, so it's kind of a, you give up the pace for maybe more reliability. I don't know, it's obviously a decision he took very swiftly after 8 DNFs. I would probably do the same, to be fair, but now you see we cut on quite nicely, the good timing there on the replay camera to see Leclerc get past Sainz very easily, of course, so he's up into P4, so it's Gasly, Alonso, myself, Leclerc, and then I would suspect probably quickly Sainz going to go down the order, maybe even to the outside of the top 10, so that's not a great start for the Spaniard, and there he goes, locking up just ahead of Hülkenberg, then a little bit later onto the Grand Prix, so the German gets past, and now here we go, the two former teammates from Season 6, Ricciardo in his new McLaren here, is probably smiling, to be honest, at seeing the Renault, his old team, having more issues, and he's probably, getting a bit of a, deja vu flashback there from his time at Renault, but he's actually still fighting away with the Mercedes car there of Hülkenberg. Down the inside he goes of, not Hülkenberg, sorry, it's Hamilton, I should say. Hülkenberg's already passed, that's Hamilton, the second Mercedes car, trying to get through, and it's a bit of a 2x2 situation because you've got the Force India fighting the Toro Rosso right behind there, and you can see it all in this very nice aerial shot. You got the two Force Indias, a bit of a sandwich between that Toro Rosso and the other McLaren, I think that is of Brendan Hartley, I think, yeah, that's the other McLaren of Hartley, but here goes Ricciardo then trying to make a move on Hamilton. He's got DRS, but Hamilton's also got DRS. He tries to go for a move though around the outside. It's a silky smooth move there, lovely stuff. So Ricciardo hasn't lost any of his racecraft then. We saw, remember last episode, Abu Dhabi, the finale, Ricciardo pulled off this insane overtake on Verstappen and Yas Marina in the last sector, and looks like he's not lost his racecraft there because that was a very silky move into turn 1. Meanwhile, we go back to our POV and we're in P3 still, but we're being pressurised very much But our teammate Leclerc there, we're going to go defensive to the inside, a little bit early on the brakes. He's going to round the outside, and so remember, he's our teammate. It's too early on in the season to have any kind of team orders, but also at the same time too early to maybe try and hold him up. So we're not going to put up too much of a fight because I knew that lap I was going to come in. So we kind of almost let him through on purpose because I know I was going to do the undercut, and so hopefully the strategy will get me back ahead of him as we go for an early pit stop then onto the soft tyres. Probably about 2 laps earlier than was said on my strategy screen, but my engineer said that, you know, do you want to come in? So I thought, yeah, you know, why not? We'll try the undercut. So here we go, onto a set of yellow wall tyres, and we're out now. The number 22 Alfa Romeo Sauber looking very damn sweet in that Australian sunshine. If you're wondering about that, by the way, I ran number 1 on the Red Bull car last season, more kind of out of spite after being fired by Ferrari. Just kind of wanted to stick it to them to have the number 1 car on the Red Bull car, but now I've reverted back to my original number 22 number. I feel like that's a bit more of my kind of identity rather than number 1. And actually, speaking about Ferrari, then the two of them, Vettel, Raikkonen, fighting over pretty much the wooden spoon is over P18 and 17 this is. So how the mighty fall there. Ferrari, the second worst car on the grid, and if they're not careful, if Williams upgrade enough at the start of this season, Ferrari might slip to the worst car on the grid. So that'd be quite some change from 2 back-to-back constructors titles in season 4 and season 5. It's almost like, you know, firing a certain someone kind of, you know, was the start of the downturn in a way. I'm not saying much else, but here we go now. Flying through the Alfa Romeo Sauber here. This is definitely going to stick it to the point where Alfa Romeo are here to fight for championships and race wins, hopefully this season, and not just be a Ferrari junior team as we fly past Raikkonen, and we'll close up to Sebastian Vettel, then my old teammate from season 5 here. We've got DRS available now onto the straight. Open that rear flap. He's going to go quite defensive to the middle line, and actually we go very, very booky there on the right-hand side and almost put it right on the grass. So thankfully the car still had enough grip there on the right to pull that move off. We're up into P17 then, and now we'll chase after the pack. We've got a lot of clean air. Really, to be honest, we're actually just racing Leclerc in terms of delta time to delta time, because there he is now. The onboard message comes on that the teammate is in the pit stop, so Leclerc is in. We just make the overtake on Lance Stroll, but you can see there, that oversteer is what I'm talking about. That oversteer wouldn't have happened with the Red Bull car, but the Sauber, even though it's the 3rd best car on the grid, it just has this kind of feeling it's still not got the max downforce ever. And so, yeah, still a bit of a handful to drive in a way. But now we go down the main pit straight. Leclerc is there on the right. This is going to be very close for the undercut, working for us. He's into turn 1. We have a switchback move to the inside there, and we undercut his line, and we're up into P10. So the undercut has worked, only by a small margin, but it did work. We came in fairly earlier than him, though, so he's going to have a lot fresher tyres now, so he might have the advantage towards the end of this Grand Prix. So now we just try and do the best job we can, I guess, at defending from him and trying to make our way through these cars that are yet to pit, really. We've got Magnussen on Super Softs. I think, obviously, a lot of the guys outside the top 10 maybe ran the Super Soft to go longer, as well as Max Verstappen. Verstappen was the only car in the top 10 to make it into the top 10 shootout on Super Softs, I will add. So I think Verstappen is actually the one leading the Grand Prix at the moment, because he was the only guy in the top 10 who didn't make an early pit stop. And yeah, there we go. Here we cut onto now a replay camera here. So Verstappen in the lead. It's a 1-2 for Red Bull Honda, but obviously Verstappen yet to make a pit stop. But Gasly, his teammate, is going to go around the outside. Surely Verstappen should just let him through there, because he's on a different strategy. They bang tyres though, and now Alonso in the Renault is right up their gearbox. The two are still side by side, and Verstappen's round. Oh my god, they made contact mid-apex, and that is going to be very controversial there for the Red Bull team. Red Bull civil war already. Round 1, race 1 of this partnership. We just about missed Verstappen on the right-hand side there, because I literally did not know where he was. I knew there was yellow flags, but how was I supposed to know that the Red Bull car was basically T-boning himself onto the racing line there? So he just about narrowly missed that. But the two Red Bulls come into contact there. The race leader and second place, Gasly, leads the way then in first still from Fernando Alonso in second place. But that could have been so much worse. But I guess that was still bad enough, because Verstappen would have been in the top 5 at least. And now he's been spun out the Grand Prix. He's going to be down in last place, I'm guessing, with front wing damage as well. And so that is going to be very interesting for Christian Horner then. Straight away, a new partnership, Gas and Verstappen. They've come into wars. I mean, me and Verstappen didn't even come into that badly. We banged tyres a few times. That was the worst thing, but neither of us took each other out like that. Straight away, race 1 of this new partnership for the Red Bull, and they've taken each other out there. So one person's taken the other person out. So yeah, we're going to have to see about how that progresses through the season. But meanwhile now, we've got our own issues here with our teammate Leclerc going down the inside now, lap 14 here. He wants the position. He's got the better pace at the moment. We're trying to claw the position back and do the best job we can defending for now. But for how much longer can we defend from Leclerc like this? Because clearly, I think you can see he's got the pace on us. He tries another little dive and darts to the inside there, and I could have done a Gasly to him there and spun him out if he wasn't lucky. But yeah, I mean, how long can we continue on like this? It's very clear to me, and hopefully to you guys, that Leclerc has the better pace, you know, and also that Toro Rosso is closing up, so I don't know how to play this, to be honest, but for now, we'll continue on, and he's going to be right up our gearbox here still, but that Toro Rosso is closing up as well, and in the same place as last time, he's going to make a move on this little straight before the chicane, not already a straight, a nice subtle left-hand curve there. He's got the inside line. We're going to brake early and try and cut back in, but it just doesn't work for us there. We don't have the best run out of that chicane that I was hoping for. We have DRS. We're going to try and close back on him, but look how close the Toro Rosso is of Ocon as well. But we're going to have actually a go as Leclerc invites us there and leaves us the space. So we're around the outside for a fantastic rear overtaking move here. We're side by side still through the next right-hander into the second last corner. Leclerc dives it back around the outside, so we're still neck and neck. Can we have enough traction around the outside? Yes, we will. And we're going to go toe-to-toe once again onto the main pit straight. We're going to try and force Leclerc to the right-hand side, but there goes Ocon. Ocon out of nowhere flies through the Frenchman in his new Toro Rosso car, flies through with the Honda power and gets up into what is, I think, P3 at this stage there, with Leclerc P4. They're side by side. We're down to P5, so we've been overtaken by two cars rather than overtaking one car of our teammate there. And just like that, Ocon is up into a brilliant third place then in the Toro Rosso. So what did I say? Toro Rosso might not be there on paper, but they just seem to be there when it comes to actual race day. The AI, the car, it all just connects, and they do so well. Meanwhile, we've got Carlos Sainz. This is later on in the Grand Prix, then as we go through the laps. He's actually solved his issue on the car. I don't know what Renault have done, but they've solved the issue. So he's now chasing after these two, Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. So watch out for this. We might see Sainz come back and overtake Ricciardo and Hülkenberg at the death of this race. Let's see as we now move on, and we're going to have the first of those overtakes. Then Carlos Sainz on the outside of Ricciardo. The two former Renault teammates there go wheel to wheel once again, but this time Sainz is the one attacking here around the outside. It's going to be a really fantastic battle. This is. They're still neck and neck there, so it's a little bit frosty. It's probably a bit personal, to be honest, here with Sainz v Ricciardo. Ricciardo's trying his best in the McLaren car, but it just doesn't have the pace and the downforce in the end, and so Sainz is going to be up into, I think that's P7, I want to say, and so he's chasing after now P6, Nico Hülkenberg. Meanwhile, obviously, we're still P5, with Leclerc P4, Ocon P3, and then the 1-2 of Gasly and Alonso. But we're into the last phase and last couple laps of this Grand Prix, and we're trying our best to try and re-overtake Leclerc, but we're having some issues, even with DRS in a straight line. I can't get enough speed on him to make even a audacious dive bomb to the inside, and to be fair, he can't do the same thing to Ocon, so very annoying situation at the moment. Ocon, Leclerc and myself, all three of us equalised, and we just can't overtake each other, and we just can't do anything. The dirty air is kicking in, obviously. Melbourne Park, always known for being tricky to overtake around here, so I'm not surprised, but it is annoying to say the least. As meanwhile, Carlos Sainz, though, does have the pace advantage, you would say, over the Mercedes and the McLaren, so he's getting past these guys quite easily. Round the outside of another nice move on the outside of the corner here, and he's up now into P6, and so maybe he has a chance to chase after us if we're not careful, but we remain in P5, and you can see still that gap remains to Leclerc and to Ocon. It's pretty much not budging. We're all just trying to kind of setting the same pace. Meanwhile, a gap that is closing is the gap between second place Fernando Alonso in the Renault and first place man Pierre Gasly in the Red Bull Honda, so we'll have to keep an eye on this as now we cut back later into the Grand Prix, and Gasly still P1. Alonso, though, close behind him. We've got a lapped car there. That might be a bit of an issue for Gasly. It's a bit of contact there between the Red Bull and the Williams car, so that Williams will definitely probably be seeing the stewards, because that was a very awkward position to be in there. And now Alonso is going to try it round the outside of the high-speed chicane. Maybe Gasly defends, though, very well to maintain P1, and Alonso will have to fight another day in second place. But now these two are so close there, so that Williams car, that lapped car, has changed the entire order of this race lead potentially, because now Alonso can really hound and pressurise Gasly. We know how good Alonso is at doing that on any driver of any calibre in any car, really, as we now move on to lap 27, back to our POV, the last 3 laps of the Grand Prix, and we're still in this rather annoying position of we're so close to Leclerc. I can literally smell an overtake, but we just don't have enough oomph here in a straight line to overtake him. I even have lower wings than I usually run. I think I've run the lowest wings I ever have at Melbourne in this season right now in this race, and still I don't have enough straight line speed, so maybe the Sauber's lacking a bit of pure engine power, and that's something I'm going to have to look into for the R&D maybe after this Grand Prix, but I just can't get close enough, and neither can Leclerc, to be fair, to Ocon as well. So maybe it is a car issue rather than my kind of issue personally. But we now move back to this fight for the race lead between Pierre Gasly and Fernando Alonso, and here comes the Spaniard. Then he'll have DRS down this back straight. He's going to pull to the outside. Then Gasly goes defensive there. Very nice aerial shot. Gasly is wide and makes some contact with Alonso. The two of them still neck and neck, but Alonso has an advantage as we go through the next right-hander into the second last corner. He cuts across. Gasly has to slot in, and there you go. A new race leader, Fernando Alonso in the Renault. His return to the Renault Works team looks like it's going to be a very happy return as he's now in the lead of the Australian Grand Prix. Gasly, though, will try and pressurise him. He has to go defensive, Alonso does, but he can't do anything there. And so for now, it looks like the Frenchman in the Red Bull Honda will have to maintain P2. If he can maybe do something in the last stages, we'll see. But we move back to our PV then on the last lap of the Grand Prix. We're still P5, still got DRS and trying to close up on Leclerc. But there goes Fernando Alonso with the purple lap time. And so he wins the Australian Grand Prix and sets the fast lap as he does it on the last lap. So a very great victory then for the Spaniard and his return to his old championship winning team there. For us though, it's a bit of a frustrating P5, but I'll take it. You know, we learnt a lot of stuff about the car today. I think I know I have to do a lot of homework to get as comfortable with this car as Leclerc is, but I'll take P5 and 4. It's a good solid start to the campaign here for Season 7.
Bring it home.
So, another fantastic victory for Renault today. And I have to wonder, Anthony Davidson, just what set them apart from the competition here.
I think a large part of the result comes down to temperament. They were able to keep their heads when everyone around them was losing theirs, and that's allowed them to get the best out of the car, to maximise the strategy and to stay out of trouble.
So a rather interesting start then to Season 7, and it looks like we might have a bit more of a challenge than I thought we would, really, to be honest. Not against other cars, but really just our teammates straight away as Leclerc beats us then. Obviously, the Drivers' Championship is the same as the race order. Constructors-wise, though, because we both finished very well, and obviously Carlos Sainz had his issues, we're up into second place, and obviously Verstappen was spun out the Grand Prix, so despite Gasly getting second place, Red Bull are third in the championship then, so it's a strong start, but obviously round one, it doesn't really mean much. The first 5 rounds really for the standings won't mean much. We'll only really get to see what the pattern is truly once we get right in the heart of the European season, I guess. So for now, we just try and do the best job we can, like I said previously. But we're going to go to the end of this episode then and look at R&D and see what's what. Now, this part of the video is actually recorded before the race, and this was me looking at the R&D chart. Now, look at this. The entire chassis side of the tree has been finished by Sauber, because remember, there was no rule regulation change from last season to this season, so a lot of the top cars here are maxing out their R&D trees, and that includes our team. We have maxed out the chassis. We can't go any higher than this, and we're not even the top team yet. We're second place in the chassis order there, so that's a little bit frustrating to say the least, that now, you know, I can't upgrade the chassis anymore. I can't even upgrade the aero anymore, and we're going to be stuck maximum P3 in the aero standings and P2 in the chassis standings. So that is a little bit frustrating, because now literally the only area I can upgrade the car is the engine side and the reliability. I can't do any upgrades to the aero, no upgrades to the chassis. I'm stuck with what I've got basically with the Sauber car, and I've got to just do engine upgrades, and even that, we've only got 4 minor upgrades to go. So this season will not really be an R&D heavy season, you know. Once I'm sure there'll be a guaranteed regulation reset probably this season now around the Japanese Grand Prix going for Season 8. So that will be a task of just saving as much resource points as we can to adapt parts. But in terms of R&D for this season, we're going to be pretty much done with it very, very swiftly, because we have enough points to purchase 2 minor engine upgrades here. So we're going to go for pure engine power and also a fuel consumption update for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Hopefully that might make some difference for the kind of lack of overtaking opportunities we had in Australia. But yeah, this is going to be a very weird season. I've never had it where I've not been able to do R&D because I've maxed out the car, or rather the AI team maxed out the car over winter. So this might be a a real challenge, because usually the way I can challenge AI is by making upgrades and actually improving the car, but I can't really improve it much more, and Renault and Red Bull clearly still have an advantage over us. So if I want to try and fight for wins and, let alone podiums, it's going to be maybe a bit more of a challenge than I thought it would be, perhaps. So we'll have to see how it progresses. But guys, if you did enjoy this first episode then of Season 7, be sure to smash that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around, do subscribe for weekly full-on content. I've been Alfa. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.